What's going on, YouTubers? This is Anam Shiraz, and in this video I'll be teaching you how to use object-oriented programming and what is it actually. So let's suppose you are working in a company that is developing an online multiplayer game, and your task is to provide an API for each player. So how you will do that? So for example, three players are currently playing the game right now, and how you will write the code for that. So for example, you have player 1, player 2, and player 3. So the best thing that a beginner can come up with is just to simply write the function for each of the code for each of the player, just like this, and each player will have its own functions, its own variables. For example, this can have the player name and its ammo and its own health and its own profile, and similarly this goes for all of the players. So what you have is three separate functions for each of the players, in that you have separate variables for each of the player, and so clearly this approach is not feasible, and it is not convenient enough, because this will gonna take more lines for same piece of code. We are not utilizing the memory in an efficient way. So the best thing to come up with is not to write a separate functions or variables for separate players. Instead, write one piece of code and give a copy of this piece of code to each of the player. Player 1, player 2 will have a copy of this, and player 3 will also have a copy of this piece of code. When we are giving a copy of this code to player 1, we are actually creating an object of this piece of code for player 1, and we can name it the object as P1, and similarly P2 and P3. Now this piece of code will have one variable: name, ammo, health, and profile. Now each player can also have some functions, for example, get ammo, get health, hit, get profile, and blah blah. I just got rid of the variable profile and added a new function named shoot. So let's create a scenario where player 1 hits player 2 with a bazooka, and we need to make sure that player 1 ammo is decreased and player 2 health is decreased. Now how we'll do that? So as I told you before, that each player has created its own copy of this piece of code. So when I say its own copy, that means that every variable and every method or function that is defined inside this piece of code is duplicated by the name of the object. You'll get to know what I mean in a second. So for example, this variable is called name, and if P1 has created an object for this piece of code, then this name will be individually identified as P1 dot name, and similarly P dot ammo and P1 dot health. And of course, if P2 has created an object of this same piece of code, then all the variables that are inside this player is duplicated as P2 dot name, P2 dot ammo, and P2 dot health. So that's how individual objects will identify particular variables and functions inside this piece of code. So this P1 dot and P2 dot is declaring the variables of the individual objects. Now the code that is written inside this circle is known as class, a class named as player. So outside of this class, where we will be implementing our gameplay scenario where P1 hits P2, and where we are actually declaring our object player and p2 equals player. So this is actually p1 is creating a copy of all of the code variables and the functions that are inside this class, and similarly for p2. Now in order to create a scenario where p1 hits p2, we will call the function shoot from p1, and we will also call a function hit of p2. And inside the shoot function we can say that to decrement the ammo by 1 or by how many times we want. And in hit function we can write a piece of code where we are decreasing the health by some percentage. So that's the whole idea of implementing this in an object-oriented way, and I hope this theoretical explanation have made you understand the concept. But if you have not fully understood the idea, then don't worry, because in the next part I will be explaining you how we can implement this by using an object-oriented programming language. Till then, stay tuned, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much.